robbing people! You're a thief! I'm concerned for the poor bastards that you've taken money off of!
This is not the start that the Cincinnati Bengals wanted to their season. And while originally I thought that things could be salvageable, I have to admit, at this point, there's a lot for this team to overcome if they even want to get to close to where they were last year. Now, again, it's still early in the season and anything could happen. So we're gonna get to everything. There's a lot to cover here. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Brings a huge smile to my face. Bam, 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 bam. You guys are making bank on Prize Picks. I absolutely love it. Week 1 was a huge success for a lot of you guys. And we're gonna keep it going, man. Each and every day, I post my picks for free on my Instagram story at The Flight Mike. And we're gonna feature the best slips on this channel each and every week. So submit them to me via Instagram DMs if you want to be featured. And if you haven't started playing Prize Picks, you use my promo code Mikerophone and they'll match your initial deposit when you sign up on Prize Picks. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mike check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? During week 1 of the NFL season, the Cincinnati Bengals disappointed many of their fans when they lost to a bunch of elves.
It's just the hooping and hollering about the Cleveland Browns. I was about to call them the elves, but yeah.
And the crazy part is the Cincinnati Bengals would lose to the elves and Ja'Marr Chase would double down on his comment despite the elves.
So I called their ass elves and we just lost to some elves, so I'm pissed on my part. I'm pissed on that, and like I said, man, we got missed opportunities. We didn't capitalize on that shit, and we lost. So that's how we lost.
And I said in my previous video on this situation that the Bengals do have a multitude of problems. The first problem being the fact that Joe Burrow signed a max contract extension that made him the richest player in NFL history at the time. This was after he hinted that he may take a pay cut to ensure that Ja'Marr Chase could get a huge bag, T. Higgins would re-sign with the team, and maybe, just maybe, if they were lucky, they would be able to retain Tyler Boyd as well. I mean, Ja'Marr Chase said this: at the end of the day, I don't think Joe's too worried about how much money he's going to make because he's already making a tremendous amount. It will work out for us. I think Joe knows what he wants and how to set up his contract to keep some of his weapons around him. I think that's the biggest part for him. It's so interesting to consistently watch quarterbacks fall into this trap. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's very difficult to turn down the biggest contract in the NFL, especially as the NFL is continuing to grow and that contract might not look as bad in 3 years from now. But I never understood why quarterbacks don't decide to, I don't know, instead of making nearly $53 million a year, I'm sure you'll do just fine with $40 million a year. But again, I'm never gonna fault a man for trying to make as much money as he can, even though if he has to sacrifice some of his success to do it. The thing that's awkward here is now we don't really know what's going to happen with T. Higgins. I mean, we immediately found out that the Cincinnati Bengals and T. Higgins were not even close on a contract extension and never were. And I don't really think it's going to look that much better moving forward for T. Higgins because although he is a tremendously talented wide receiver, he's probably the most prolific wide receiver on the Cincinnati Bengals during this early part of the season, there's no question in everyone's mind that Joe Burrow's #1 wide receiver is Ja'Marr Chase. T. Higgins would easily be wide receiver 1 on 90% of teams in the NFL. I mean, you know how each and every year we talk about a team that will make a gigantic, grandiose trade in order to bolster their young quarterback's confidence? I mean, the best examples being Jalen Hurts when he received Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, Tua when he received Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, Kyler Murray when he received DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like T. Higgins is going to be that next wide receiver that is going to get traded at some point. I don't think it's going to happen in the middle of the season, but the Bengals essentially back themselves into a corner where they either need to franchise tag T. Higgins or they just have to let him walk. And that's before we get it to the fact that Ja'Marr Chase is also going to get a huge contract extension soon as well. So it's definitely a tough situation, but that was only one part of the equation for the Cincinnati Bengals. The other part was the fact that Joe Burrow looked horrible in week 1. He truly performed horrifically in week 1. The man went 14 13 of 31. He barely was able to get over 80 yards passing. He did not look like the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And at the time, I said that the reason was because Joe Burrow suffered a calf injury during preseason and training camp, which made him focus more on his rehabilitation as opposed to him practicing with his teammates, working on installs, working on their timing, and making sure they establish a good chemistry for the regular season. And honestly, if there's a person that is going to give Joe Burrow leeway for not doing well in the beginning of the season, it'll be me, because usually the Cincinnati Bengals don't perform well during their first couple of games and they end up just okay. This time's a little bit different though. You see, Joe Burrow had a much better game versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Cincinnati Bengals still lost against the Baltimore Ravens. He didn't look like vintage Joe Burrow either. He did throw for 2 passing touchdowns. He was able to get over 200 passing yards. He did throw an interception, but there was a critical moment in the game that without a doubt is going to alter the Cincinnati Bengals season. Once again, Joe Burrow re-aggravated his calf injury. That's not good. Now, of course, there's Joe Burrow's reason as to why the Cincinnati Bengals underperformed.
We just didn't play well enough to win either of these games. We got to find ways to make those plays down the stretch to win these kind of games. And
he also mentioned his issue with the turnovers.
Looking back, we moved it really well. It came down to the turnover in the red zone. When you're playing that team, you can't have that mistake because they're going to run it well. They're going to keep it away from you. They're going to score points. Lamar's a great player. He's going to make plays, so you got to take advantage of all your red zone opportunities, and that was my mistake.
And this was a huge theme in the game, at least in his opinion.
He did some good things in that first half too. Obviously the stats weren't great, but second half, I thought we were rolling. Like I said, you can't have a red zone turnover against that team, and that was on me.
Now, let me give you my assessment, because this is a much bigger problem than what Joe Burrow's suggesting. The issue is twofold for the Cincinnati Bengals defense and on Joe Burrow. Defensively, the Cincinnati Bengals give up a 91.9 opponent QBR when they're not blitzing, which is the worst rate in the entire NFL. And bear in mind, this is against Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, and with all due respect to Deshaun Watson, I'm not viewing him as the Deshaun Watson that he was with the Houston Texans, at least not yet. And it's not like Lamar Jackson has been performing really well in this young season either. Obviously, there might be some growing pains with that brand new offense, but the Cincinnati Bengals defense has already created a problem. Ironically, offensively, they have the exact same issue. Joe Burrow has a 37.5% completion percentage whenever he's getting blitzed this season. Now, again, it's only 2 games, but this is very shocking because one of the things Joe Burrow really succeeds at is making the defense pay for blitzing him. Very simple to do so whenever you have T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon to dump the ball off to. This year hasn't been the case. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that the Baltimore Ravens didn't even bother blitzing Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was struggling against 4-man rush. And whenever you can't get the game going just versus 4-man rush, that's when we have a big problem. He was only sacked once on Sunday, but it's still problematic that he didn't look like the Joe Burrow of old, despite not getting blitzed very much. And now it seems like the problems are about to be way worse, because according to Joe Burrow, he re-aggravated his ankle injury, and currently we don't even know how long he's going to be out for. So not only did he sign the biggest contract in NFL history, but on top of the growing pains that he's already had with the Cincinnati Bengals, it seems like Joe Burrow is suffering a major setback. So this is according to Adam Schefter, where Zach Taylor has reportedly told reporters that it was hard to say whether Joe Burrow would be ready to play on Monday night versus the Rams due to his aggravated calf injury. The Bengals are still in the evaluation process, so it's just another setback on top of multiple setbacks for the Cincinnati Bengals. So the former Washington University Heisman Trophy candidate Jake Browning is the next man up under center for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's never completed a pass in his entire NFL career, and it's not like the Rams are the Rams of old. This isn't last year's Rams. They clearly found a Cooper Kupp clone and Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. I don't know, man. They're practically the same person. And to be honest, I'm really happy because I picked him up in fantasy football. I've been betting higher on all of his receptions, and usually we've been hitting them on Prize Picks. With that being said, never completing a pass in your NFL career and going up against Aaron Donald is terrifying. I mean, maybe the Bengals are able to win, and who knows, maybe Joe Burrow is able to come back. back, but in my opinion, I think the way you should go about this is let Joe Burrow rest a little bit so you don't throw your entire season away, because a calf strain can turn into a torn Achilles really quick, according to my brother who is a podiatry student.
Who still hasn't posted content onto his Instagram. God damn it, Raph. All of these followers, for what?
Jokes aside, he did predict the Achilles tear from Aaron Rodgers right before he got imaging within a few snaps in, and he actually cited Kevin Durant's calf strain with the Golden State Warriors when the Warriors faced off against the Toronto Raptors in the 2019 NBA Finals that turned into a torn Achilles as evidence for this happening in sports before. At this point, you don't want to mess with Joe Burrow's leg. This is the guy that's already torn his ACL throughout his career. If he tears his Achilles, it's not like Joe Burrow's known for his ability to scramble, but he is a little bit more mobile than the average pocket passing QB. It's not like he's Tom Brady in the pocket, although he does have great pocket presence like Tom Brady. You could depend on Joe Burrow picking up first downs with his legs every once in a while. He tears his Achilles and that ability is completely gone. So once again, the Cincinnati Bengals are dealing with multiple problems. One is Joe Burrow's contract, potentially resulting in them not being able to pay T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. Most definitely not Tyler Boyd. The second big problem is Joe Burrow missed a lot of training camp and preseason with this calf strain, and he still went within the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, and he re-aggravated the injury. There's a question: do you still throw Joe Burrow out there to face off against the LA Rams, or do you move forward with Jake Browning? What would you do in the comment section down below, especially considering that the Bengals are 0-2 and they currently are missing their mojo? I'll admit that. Can they get it back? Well, it really depends on how they decide to address this issue. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.